I'll also throw this out here. The more technology and usefulness we can build for Bitcoin, the better an
Mhm.
inflation hedge it will become. Part
For
of the
sure.
reason that it's still relatively volatile is it is still, I mean, it's less, I'd say it's slightly less speculative than than almost every other crypto out there, but there's still a strong speculative element to it. And the more, if you look at something like gold, which of course, even gold's nowhere near a perfect inflation hedge, but it does have other applications. It has other reasons it exists and is needed in what it's used for, whether it's electronics or jewelry or whatever. And so increasing the value, the other uses and the valuable uses of Bitcoin absolutely makes it a better inflation hedge. It makes it a better sound money.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Okcoin Live. Today, I'm the only host. Yours truly, Alex Chizik, head of listings at Okcoin. And before we welcome my other Alex, counterpart Alex, it's going to be a very confusing session, I think. Alex interviewing Alex. Maybe we'll switch roles. Maybe you'll interview me, Alex. I don't know. It's going to be a wild hour, I think. We'll do a quick plug for who we are as Okcoin and we like to think we're the exchange with a heart. We have the lowest fees. We don't charge anything for earn. We really believe in crypto for all. And one of the reasons why I came to the company and one of my roles, obviously, my primary role is to list good assets. We are very close to the Stacks ecosystem, which is why it's so exciting to have Alex Miller on today, who's very deeply, very much part of that Stacks ecosystem. And we'll let him talk to us a little bit about the Hero wallet. But Stacks is one of those tokens that we really believe in and we've been very close with. So look, come if you want to trade good coins and good tokens, come to Okcoin. We think we won't let you down, but send us comments if we do, and we'll definitely improve. So on that shameless plug, let's welcome Alex Miller to Okcoin Live. And Alex, I'll let you do your own intro. I don't want to butcher it. You have an incredible story, career, and let's talk about Hiro. Like, what the heck is Hiro? Let's just jump in.
What is Hiro indeed? Well, thanks so much for having me on. Really exciting to be here and chatting with another Alex today. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Hiro. Hiro is the dev tools company for the Stacks ecosystem. So our mission is to just make the best possible developer experience, make it as easy as possible for people to build great Bitcoin apps using Stacks. So I've been with the company for just over a year now. I joined originally as COO, took over as CEO about 3 or 4 months ago. As Manib founded Trust Machines, and there's been an incredible amount of exciting developments in the Stacks ecosystem that we can talk about, including you guys in the Bitcoin Odyssey Fund. And so, yeah, I've been with the company for a little over a year now. Before that, I've been an advisor and operator for various startups. Spent 8.5 years at a small programming website called Stack Overflow that some people might have been kind of both in an operations role and then launching and scaling out the private and enterprise Stack Overflow for Teams business there. So, it's funny because I'm originally like a very Web 2 guy, right? Like, again, 8.5 years at Stack Overflow, worked with all kinds of different startups and things. And then for the last year and a half or so, I've been converted all the way into Web3 and all of the really cool potential that it has here. And that's really the big reason that I got so excited about the Stacks ecosystem in the first place and about Hiro is like I love enablement and I love new technology. And the idea to like get to come build this platform that is helping developers build that next generation internet, because that is the scope of the mission of the Stacks ecosystem, right? This is not like a fly by night thing. Let's see how many monkeys we can sell. This is about how do we actually really create the framework for the next generation internet. And that's the reason it's built on top of Bitcoin, right? It's like Bitcoin is the OG crypto. It is the thing that is most well known, the biggest asset base, most importantly, the best security and the most trusted. And so if you're going to build something that ambitious and that big, that's where you want to be doing it.
To be fair, Alex, though, there are some people that found some bored monkeys. They sold them on the internet, and now we have Yuga Labs and Bored Ape, Yacht Club, and so they did fairly well selling monkeys on the internet.
I'm not saying it's not a good business. I'm not saying it's not a cool proof of concept for things. And actually, what's funny is you see a lot of people who are like, why are people like paying for monkey? I don't know, man. People said the same thing about Warhol 50 years ago, right? Like it's art, it's culture. I actually totally respect it on that effect. Um, but I don't think it's going to be like the basis of what we do next.
It's interesting that you say this as part of my role in listings. Actually, you could say the major part of the role is to look at the space and understand what's next and what narratives are going to stick and which ones aren't. And there's obviously there's room for Bitcoin. It is
Mhm.
the OG. It's not going anywhere. You can argue then you go down the risk curve. There's a lot of room for Ethereum, and then kind of everything else. And some things will stick and win, some things won't. The NFT space, and we weren't supposed to talk about this, but it kind of went down this. So let's spend 5 minutes on this topic.
Sure.
I don't understand. I respect it. I don't buy it because I don't. I also don't buy modern art. I don't or art in general. I don't buy a Warhol. I don't know how to value it. I don't. It's just not me. But there is something to be said about people wanting to own culture. When I was a kid, I had my Michael Jordan basketball cards, and I would have paid up. I would have broken my piggy bank to have a Michael Jordan real signature. A real signed card. And it's the same thing. It's a JPEG or whatever, a GIF that's stamped in the blockchain. It's the original. And so, who are we to knock someone else's choice about what they find value in, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think also when you're talking about NFTs, there's two very distinct parts to NFTs. There's the technology layer of non-fungible tokens, and then there is the what you actually apply it to, right? And so colloquially, we use NFT to describe the actual artwork, but there's nothing inherent about the NFT that you can only use it for art and for culture.
Mhm.
And so I'm similar to you. I don't really own modern art. I mean, honestly, my favorite art and things is my wife and I are really into like pictures of infrastructure and stuff. Like we've got like the Chicago pics of like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and ports and parking lot top down shots throughout our house. Um, I'd buy an NFT of that. But yeah, I don't buy modern art either. But I don't think that diminishes the value of it on
Mhm.
it, and I certainly don't think it diminishes the interesting technological capability of NFTs. I've got friends who are working on how do you apply that to like real estate, and obviously real estate's on the blockchain is one of the things that has for a long time been like an idea. I think from the earliest days of crypto was thought of like, hey, you could represent uh, real estate assets on the blockchain. NFTs are probably the ideal way to do that, right? And I think there's a lot of other things where you do want to tokenize and be able to collateralize assets, and the that underlying framework of a non fungible token is probably the way to go about it.
Yeah, it's this is the way I'm thinking about it too. It's art is part one. Well, CryptoKitties was part one, right? The art is like part one and a half. Uh, NFTs within games is part two, and then we're going to either there's going to be some sort of convergence of what's being tokenized, call it like stocks, and what's
Hmm.
being NFT'd, things like real estate that is non fungible by nature. And I think it's coming. It just we don't fully understand it. The other interesting part is, or not understand it, we don't fully appreciate. The world doesn't fully appreciate how quickly this will come. I think the other part of it is. The ability to almost structure culture, right? Create something take something that's amorphous and soft and make it into some sort of structured, gamified token, NFT that has an upside, that has a gamification element to it, that has an excitement element to it. And actually, one thing I think we'll be able to see later on is uh, we'll be able to track how different culture is getting adopted, right? Based on how these NFTs are getting traded, sold, and shared, rented out. So we'll see what culture is getting picked up where, and I think we'll be able to actually codify culture in a way that we haven't codified before. So
Yeah, there's certainly a data layer we're going to have that was not possible before.
So speaking of this, I know we kind of went off on tangent. Before
Yeah,
the show, Alex and I talked a little bit about here's what we'll talk about, and then I start him off with a curveball.
boom,
With
total left turn.
Total left turn. So let's talk a little bit about Hero, because you guys are building the tools for Stacks, right? And let's actually back up and say what Stacks, right? What's
So
Hero? Yeah, and then here's what I'm going to do. We'll bring NFTs back in because NFTs have to be part of your roadmap.
NFTs are
And
there's already 140,000 plus NFTs on Bitcoin. So yeah,
amazing.
on Bitcoin via Stacks. So look, Stacks is a project originally known as Blockstack, and actually even before that one name, but let's stick with Blockstack and Stacks. Um, that is bringing smart contracts to Bitcoin, right? So all of that same goodness that you know from like Ethereum and whatnot, we're bringing that back to the OG crypto, the one that again is most trusted, biggest asset value, and you've probably heard there's a lot of different projects that are looking to expand and increase the capability of Bitcoin, that are doing a lot of interesting things on it. But Stacks is really focused entirely on how do we get fully expressive smart contracts on Bitcoin. And so the company that I run now, Hero, originally actually built the blockchain, but when we had the real big launch of it back in January of 2021, it's a completely decentralized. It's run by miners. We'll talk a little bit later, I think, probably about proof of transfer and how that works. But it's a totally decentralized blockchain run by miners, just like Bitcoin. And our entire focus now is all on the tools that people need to build on top of it. So we make Clarinet, which is the a tool for writing smart contracts in Clarity, which is the smart contract language we use. Uh, we make the Stacks API, stacks.js, different various plugins that people need. We've got some new things coming out like Orchestra. And so it's all about just making it easy as possible for developers to build their applications on top of Bitcoin via Stacks.
And then there's the Hero Wallet. Can you touch upon a little bit about the Hero Wallet? Because I use it. I want to
Yeah.
have a line to you, Alex. Whenever things go wrong, who do you think I'm going to call? I'll be like, Alex.
Again, to be clear, it's a decentralized blockchain. I can't just insert more tokens into your wallet. But I do
Well,
know I do know a great exchange you can go buy STX from.
oh, where would that be?
God, I'll remember the name later. So the the Hero wallet, yeah, we've got both a desktop wallet and a web wallet. Again, kind of all the core wallet functionality you know and love. Manage your STX, interact with DApps, buy Bitcoin BNS domains. So you can find me at alex.btc. The same way folks have their Ethereum domain names. We've got 40 or 50,000 people who've registered their Bitcoin names as well, all settled back and secured by Bitcoin. And all of that is doable via the Hero wallet.
And actually, tell me a little bit about buying domain names, because that's I think an underappreciated part of the wallet. Um, are people using this? Are a lot of people like?
Yeah.
What's the split, more or less, between tokens and or holding tokens and getting
Yeah,
that
so like I said,
BTC
there's been
domain?
40 or 50,000 BNS names registered since we launched BTC.us last year. So it's definitely, I think, a lot of people have taken it. And, I think it's one of those interesting things where going back to the discussion of culture, it's something that people do partly because, for the technical and, for the capability of it and being able to associate a name instead of just a number to their wallet. But there's also a culture aspect, right? And so if you go on Twitter and like you'll see people who identify on there as as their name .btc, this, and you see people doing this with Ethereum domain names too. So it's definitely a way to affiliate yourself in with a community that you want to be a part of. um, I think identity and ownership has always been one of kind of the key founding principles of the Stacks project. It's the whole reason it was started. And you hear about people talking about this all the time when we're talking about Web3, right? One of the whole big points is to regain control over our identities and data online that was, for lack of a better term, co-opted by like massive platforms that had some really nice advantages of making it easy for people to get online and be with other people. It was, Web 2 is easier to get online and participate in than Web 1 was. But I think the real promise of Web3 is unifying, kind of getting the best of both worlds of that ownership that we had back in Web 1, the ownership and the decentralization of Web 1, with the ultimate ease and central gathering places of Web 2. And I think, domain centralized or sorry, decentralized domain names like BNS is a really big way to do that.
So I want to come back to this. There's a lot to discuss about what's coming onto Bitcoin, but before that, I'm going to be annoying. I'm going to ask for a feature that I really want.
Okay, hit me.
I want multi-level stacking on the Hero wallet. Can you, and maybe the audience doesn't know what multi-layer stacking is, but maybe we use an example of city coins, because Stacks uses proof of transfer, right, which is a
Mhm.
very unique consensus algorithm or mechanism, if you will. So can you talk to us a little bit about what does it mean to multi-level stack? And
Sure.
this is a completely unique feature of Stacks. And
Right.
then can we do with Hero?
Yeah. So proof of transfer, as you were saying, is a really innovative mechanism that we came up with, and again launched in January 2021. And the way it basically works is that instead of using computers to solve math problems, or looking at proof of stake or space and time or any of those other ones, the miners basically bid Bitcoin in order for the chance to win the right to write the block, the next stacks block. And the thing that's great about it is, one, it's a low barrier to entry, but it also means all that Bitcoin that is basically being sent as part of that bidding process to try and win, gets paid out to people who lock up their stacks as part of the stacking process. And so, like, I hold some stacks. I bought my original stacks through Okcoin. And I stacked them through a Okcoin. And so basically, I hold some stacks there, and I earn a Bitcoin yield on it. It's a really, really cool thing, and it's great because, again, you're earning Bitcoin yield. It's not even like you're earning the stacks yield. But that proof of transfer mechanism works all the way up. So you can basically create new tokens, what are called SIP10 tokens for us, on top of that, use that same kind of mechanism. So you mentioned city coins, Miami coin, and MyC coin. The way they are mined is by bidding STX, the same way that miners mine STX by bidding Bitcoin. To do it one layer up, you mine Miami coin by bidding STX to try and win Miami coin. And if you have Miami coin and you stack that Miami coin, you win that STX yield, which you can then stack again and earn the Bitcoin yield on. So it's just kind of like yields all the way down, which is part of what I think makes the Bitcoin ecosystem and the Stacks ecosystem so interesting for DeFi applications in general. So yeah, the right now I think stacking for things like Miami Coin and NYC coins only supported on certain exchanges like Okcoin. That's where my NYC coin is. Lived there for 11 years, so I kind of had to get some. Um, when that's coming to the Hero wallet, you'll have to stay tuned and see.
Awesome. Well, look, I think this is one of the unique aspects, right, of what Stacks brings to the ecosystem. And I didn't. I wish I came up with this. I didn't. I found this online, but someone basically made an equivalence of Bitcoin plus Stacks is kind of like Ethereum plus Polygon, right? It's
Mhm.
essentially a way to scale. Well, one has smart contracts at the base layer, and Polygon scales it. Bitcoin doesn't, and you guys scale it with smart contracts, or at least not you guys, but Stacks. Um, and I think it's for the first time. And you mentioned the Bitcoin Odyssey Fund. I'll do a plug for that because I want to talk to you about what's actually coming to Bitcoin. The reason why we at Okcoin are very bullish on Stacks is for the first time, Stacks brings at scale smart contracts to Bitcoin.
Yep.
And those are kind of, you mentioned those, one name and then block stacks and then stacks, and the real main net of Stacks started January 2021. So it's been about a year and a half. Some kinks were worked out within Stacks for the first year. It's kind of now ready for real prime time. And this whole time, the market has been, ballooning and moonboying. And the Stacks folks that I know have been building. And this is what I think is setting up Stacks to be a real winner in the long term. And then we see things like, you know, some of the other blockchains, we won't mention them. Some big founders are leaving, the price falls. Sometimes one blockchain keeps on having outages, and has to be reset. So there are smart contract layers, L1s, have kind of issues to go through. Bitcoin, however, is the one that keeps on chugging along. And with Stacks, now we can really do things that weren't really possible before. One of those is DeFi. And so the whole thesis behind the ecosystem fund that we put together for Stacks is that I think at the very least DeFi and identity are going to come to Bitcoin. And in order to be fully enabled, are going to have to come to Stacks. So how do you see DeFi on Stacks? Do you see more? There's Alex, there's Arcadico, other projects that are starting to build. Are you bullish on DeFi on Bitcoin? Is it going to be through Stacks? What's going to happen with stable coins? Are stable coins coming? How do you see that space?
Yeah.
What happens in 22 and 23 with Bitcoin and Stacks?
Sure. So, I mean, number one, I think if you're just talking about DeFi in general, obviously DeFi is going to be huge on Bitcoin. Again, Bitcoin is the sound money of the crypto world. I mean, this is one of the interesting things when you look at some of the other projects out there, including Ethereum, that kind of started programmability and now want to become sound money. It's a lot easier to add programmability to sound money than the other way around. And so I think it's just logical that ultimately you're going to have a huge DeFi market on Bitcoin because it's got hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in asset value on there right now, and it's associated with it. So you've got a lot of projects, obviously, that are, I think in particular, Lightning's really great for adding faster payments to Bitcoin, and it makes it really powerful for that kind of payment things. And you're seeing projects like Taro that are coming out or being proposed to potentially come out in the next couple of years that would allow kind of other assets to be represented. There's definitely some value there. But I think fundamentally, to really unlock all of DeFi, you do need the fully expressive smart contracts thing. And so I think that's where you're really going to see Stacks takes its place in it, is that to do things like lending and swaps, even derivatives, whatever you want to do with it, that's all I think going to get built on the Stack layer. Because it allows it to interact directly back to Bitcoin on itself. It allows you can still do things like opening Lightning channels, and you'll be able to take actions automatically based on anything else that's connecting back to the core Bitcoin protocol, because Stacks can read Bitcoin natively. Like the actual Stacks nodes can do it and execute based on that. So it gives you a really powerful layer to, no matter how you're doing payments, no matter how you're transacting on the Bitcoin level, you can automatically be executing and running your DeFi on Stacks based on that.
What are you hearing customers ask you guys specifically to build? And maybe your customers are both retail and developers. What's next in the roadmap?
Yeah. So on the, I'd say, we definitely consider our core customers at this point to be developers. That's where we're putting our time. One is one big thing is just developers always want to be learning more, and so we're putting a lot of time on like educational and onboarding materials and things for folks to help them make it easier to just get in there and get started in writing. So that's number one. Number two is we're doing a lot of work on things like Clarinet to make it easier to write the smart contracts and just better tools for that. And then one of our really big projects right now that we just announced in the last month or so is Hyperchains. And so Hyperchains is basically the L2 scaling solution for Stacks. Right? Stacks settles everything back to Bitcoin. Hyperchains allow app developers to actually open their own chain that trades off a little bit against that trilemma. Trades off a little bit of centralization for even lower latency and higher capacity. And so you can basically build infinitely scalable apps that run on kind of this hyperchain that settle back to Stacks, which settles back to Bitcoin. And so that's actually already now on testnet. We're going to be starting to invite some developers into it very shortly. And you're going to see a lot of development around that over the next year.
How is it different than microblocks? Can you talk to us a little bit about microblocks and
Yeah.
how will Hyperchain be different?
So microblocks basically serve to give a little bit faster confirmation, as low as about 30 seconds for transactions written to the main chain. But microblocks really just improve latency. They don't actually necessarily fully confirm the blocks until the block closes, and it doesn't actually increase the transaction capacity of the Stacks network. The cool thing about hyperchains is because it's because it is an L2 running on top of it, that's where that kind of infinite scalability comes from, because people can build their own chains They can choose how centralized or decentralized they want it to be based on their specific app and what they need it to do. And so you're going to greatly increase the capacity of the Stacks network that way.
Yeah, so especially for DeFi, let's take a DEX, for example. DEXs need to record the transactions onto the chain fairly
Yep.
quickly. And as we scale DEXs, at scale DEX, you could see, you know, a few, if not 10 to 15 to 20 transactions per second, potentially, of different trades going through various DEXs as they reach, see a centralized exchange capacity. Can that happen on Stacks now, or can that happen with the hyperchain?
Yeah, I think you could at least start to build it on Stacks right now, and it would work. But I think that's an ideal example of where hyperchains are just going to make the experience for both developers and users even better. Like that's exactly the kind of application that we're really looking at, and people think the other big applications, gaming, right? There's a similar thing. Uh,
Hmm.
you only need to write certain transactions when you're doing gaming to it, but having that is a really powerful tool to be able to do it. Um, and then just again, any app developer who wants that little bit more control while still knowing that everything is ultimately secured back by Bitcoin.
How when you mentioned Lightning before, Lightning is obviously fantastic for payments. How do you? And that's a bit of a frenemy, right? Because you might be competing on payments in some ways. No, you don't. You don't.
No, I mean we don't see payments as a differentiator for the Stacks network. I think again, Stacks all comes back to fully expressive smart contracts. Like that's what we think the key thing we're unlocking
Mhm.
and doing is. And so I think I don't think you're going to see Stacks really try and pursue direct payments. I think maintaining some focus is a better thing there. And so yeah, no, Lightning's great for direct payments, and we'll just do everything that's the actual contracts that like trigger and send payments on it.
So what's a use case that's next in the roadmap, or something you guys are saying, hey, this is a big use case, not solved yet. We want to build tools to be able to solve it.
Yeah, so I think dexes are a big one. Like I said, DeFi's a huge one, and you've already got hundreds of millions of dollars in DeFi locked up and transacting through Stacks. I'd like to see that 10x, 20x, 30x over time. I think another really good one though actually is gaming, and similar to gaming, almost anything where you want normal people coming in. And the reason for that is again, go back to the brand of Bitcoin, right? What's something that people know and trust? People don't want to deal with buying Ethereum or anything, but Stacks allows you to build and have your folks transact very easily using Bitcoin. I think for when you're trying to pull in, the billions of gamers that exist in this world and get them introduced to that next generation, that Web3 gaming or whatever, play to earn, whatever you want to call it, or whatever exactly you're doing. Um, I think Stacks is the ideal place to be building on them.
Why?
Well, because like I said, it's the association and the brand to Bitcoin for it. I think it's a lot lower lift for people, I think, to come into crypto gaming and do it through the brand they already know and trust than to have to go learn it like what Cardano is, right?
Do you?
You're not going to get
Yeah.
gamers to get into various different tokens and things. They want something simple. They want to focus on the game, and that's what we're looking to allow them to do.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things here, Cardano or not or whomever, is dev tools. I know, and this is what you guys are building. I mean, the dev tool ecosystem has to be robust for developers
Yep.
to come, because, as you said, if there's a shortage of solid on-chain Web3 devs. There's a plethora of Web2 devs out there.
Yep.
So if you can make a transition from Web2 to Web3 easier, um,
Exactly.
that's the holy grail, right? So you can abstract away the blockchain, right? You guys take care of the hard part, so to speak. A lot of the devs do what they do best.
Yeah. And I'd say, even to that idea, look, they're the tools that we produce that are first party tools, right? That things that we make to let developers write their smart contracts and whatnot. And then there's the tooling and things that we produce to help third parties integrate stacks and bring their various APIs and different tooling. There's some really great, different sort of cross ecosystem, cross chain developer tool and infrastructure providers out there that already do or are working to integrate Stacks support for it. And I absolutely view that as part of our job here at Hiro, is making like the APIs and SDKs and things that make it easy, or again, for people like at exchanges, you guys have to do work to integrate and support stacks. And I think part of our job is to make it really easy to get that support as broadly as possible by making good tools for you guys to do that with.
So what's can you? This is fantastic, and I love it. Just to make it a little bit real for our listeners, what's a good story of where someone, an exchange or developer, came to you and said, "Hey, I wish we had X, right, as a tool," and then you guys just made it happen, and they were able to use that in whatever it is that they're building. Do you have
Sure.
anything in recent memory?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things I can talk about. There's obviously a lot of things I can't actually
Sure.
talk about that we're doing. I mean, I will say, by the way,
We
Jared,
love to leak alpha, by the way, on this
yeah,
show. So
yeah.
if you
Sorry,
just
I
want
know,
to leak some
I'm
alpha,
very good about not violating anything. I don't want my marketing team to get mad at me, please. Um, look, I'll say number one, your guys' engineering team's been great to work with and go back and forth with. So like you guys have been great partners to us on it. I think BitGo's another interesting one where they're a great custody provider, and over I think the course of like 6 months, we did 3 or 4 different levels of integration with them. Right, starting with the most basic level of support and integration, and building progressively from there. And so I think that's really the model we look to use with a lot of people. Is like, hey, let's get basic support for something in. And then roll out and increase over time, right? Get core stack support, get stacking support, get SIP10 token support. And as you unlock each of those things, you get more and more demand from the users who have now come into that ecosystem and want to get even more out of it.
yeah. Let me just switch gears a little bit. Just
Yeah.
in terms of maybe something a little bit softer on the marketing side. Every time I feel like I talk to people about stacks, I always get the same pushback: is, well, everyone's building on Ethereum, right? And Stacks is like, yeah, it's nice, but Bitcoin, boring old grandpa, yawn, yawn, move on. Ethereum is where it's at, right? If you're not on
Yep.
Ethereum, how do you how do you change that mindset?
Sure. I mean, I think one thing to keep in mind is Stacks is less than a year and a half old, right? Like if you look at the amount of growth on it, again, hundreds of millions in DeFi, hundreds of thousands of NFTs on there, tens of thousands of registered names, thousands of smart contracts that have been deployed. There's been amazing growth in the Stacks ecosystem over the last year and a half. I mean, our API now does like 300 million plus requests a month on it. But obviously, Bitcoin is a much smaller app ecosystem right now. The flip side to that is you've got way bigger growth potential there, right? So that actually is one thing I'd say to developers who are looking to build in the space. Like, look, a lot of the growth on Ethereum is already baked into it, whereas in the Bitcoin ecosystem, you are earlier, but that means that there's going to be 1,000x in the next few years. There's going to be like 1,000x increase in the amount of applications and usage that's built on top of Bitcoin there. And by natively being in the Bitcoin system, you have a greater pool of assets to access ultimately. So, yeah, Ethereum was absolutely the first mover. They innovated on a lot of stuff that's also great for us because we can, take a lot of inspiration, I think, from some of the things they did and learn a lot of lessons from what they did. But yeah, ultimately, it's still early days. There's a huge amount of growth. And, as long as we keep on the trajectory that we're going now, or personally, I think we'll increase it even, within a couple of years, you're going to see a Bitcoin app economy that like rivals the size of where Ethereum is.
I mean, I'd love that, because for the first time, then we will look at Bitcoin as a network
Yeah.
versus just Bitcoin as an asset. And so it's, I think this narrative of digital gold, inflation hedge, and everyone's very short term focused. So with the macro environment, looking at Bitcoin saying it's an inflation hedge isn't proving out in the short term. And
Yeah.
so when people are, living day to day and not year to year, it's all good. I wish we were all Michael Saylor. So like, forget about it for,
Well,
20 years.
I'll also throw this out here. The more technology and usefulness we can build for Bitcoin, the better an
Mhm.
inflation hedge it will become. Part
For
of the
sure.
reason that it's still relatively volatile is it is still, I mean, it's less, I'd say it's slightly less speculative than than almost every other crypto out there, but there's still a strong speculative element to it. And the more, if you look at something like gold, which of course even gold's nowhere near a perfect inflation hedge, but it does have other applications. It has other reasons it exists and is needed in what it's used for, whether it's electronics or jewelry or whatever. And so increasing the value, the other uses and the valuable uses of Bitcoin absolutely makes it a better inflation hedge. It makes it a better sound money.
And also puts Bitcoin to more people's hands. So you have a much
Absolutely.
bigger, wider, deeper market to move. So the volatility will come down. Yeah, this is another reason why I love stacks, and I'm so bullish personally, not investment advice, on the ecosystem. Um, because we're flipping the script about Bitcoin, right?
Hmm.
And if we're right, and then if various regulation comes, everyone at least is acknowledging that Bitcoin, right, is a commodity. Bitcoin is here to stay. You can say what you want about XYZ coin or XYZ layer one, but Bitcoin, I think everyone in the world agrees about what it is. So now this OG biggest kind of baddest, most secure network, the sound money of the crypto world, and soon of the internet. Now that it's going to have a layer of actual usefulness on it with actually useful dev tools, right? It's all about dev tools. So one of the things that I do, we look at GitHub. We look at GitHub code commits when we look at projects to see what is actually happening there. Is there development? Once developers come and once Bitcoin catches up to Ethereum, it's gonna be lights out because you have one
Hmm.
that's very secure and one that for better or for worse has
Yeah,
the momentum behind it, but that can change.
exactly. I mean, just it's technology. I'm not sure there's any area in which momentum changes quicker than like technology.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk. You mentioned gaming. So we look. I think DeFi definitely coming. We talked about identity a little bit. I want to come back to identity because I
Mhm.
want to know if there are actual identity solutions coming to Bitcoin. But let's talk really quickly about gaming. It seems to be a narrative of 2021 and one that's maybe a little bit muted in 2022. Do you see gaming? Is there robust growth in gaming, especially gaming on Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think there's a big opportunity on gaming. I think the so look, one thing that I actually often say is that I think crypto has actually been hurt by the amount of money that was poured into it. Because it led to a lot of chasing, basically, just how do I get that next fastest dollar, and didn't let certain parts of crypto evolve in the most organic way, especially if you compare it to like, the internet during the 80s and 90s. So, I- I think gaming is one of the areas that got hit by that. And you've seen a lot of what I'll call low effort proposals for gaming on crypto, right? And a lot of stuff that gamers themselves have pushed back on. So, a lot of people who basically took like some random game that was existing and are like, I'm going to make it a crypto game by like sticking NFTs in it so that I can sell more things. And obviously, people don't like that and pushed back against it. But lately, over the last couple months, I've started talking to some gaming companies, including ones who are building on stacks, who are taking like a little bit more, again, holistic and organic of an approach and saying, okay, not just like, great, how do I sell another thing through here, but what's actually unlocked by rethinking what it means to make like a blockchain powered game, right? What actually needs to happen on the blockchain versus not? What does this let my users gain in terms of like ownership and interaction back to me, and in terms of just their entire relationship to the game, right? There's been in-game economies in gaming for as decades at this point. I mean, I remember back in college when I had like my roommate sold his World of Warcraft account and character, right? Like there's money and economy has always been a huge part of gaming.
Mm.
And so bringing it to the blockchain, I think, is a really interesting way to basically remove some of the core control in some ways, or return again some control back to users, where you're actually integrating that in-game economy to the larger world economy and giving people more direct control over it, because now they can trade things on the blockchain instead of only through the in-game thing. So from what I've talked to people, I think there's folks who are starting to really think about this, and I think over the next couple of years you're going to see it. But I think definitely this first iteration of gaming you saw, just like let's throw NFTs in the game, is like dying off rapidly, and like good riddance on that.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. What other use cases do you think will ultimately come to Bitcoin? So again, many use cases in crypto, right? And
Right.
I want to let me just rephrase the question, because a lot of times, and I may be biased, I hear everyone sometimes uses crypto for everything. This crypto, wine crypto. Kevin O'Leary talks about his watches, and that's the NFT for crypto. Which, yeah, sure, he thinks it's a great use case. I actually think it's not the best use
Mm.
case, but that's neither here nor there, right? Everyone is throwing crypto out as a solution to all the problems. But I think there are certain concrete problems. DeFi, very concrete, very, very concrete use case where crypto actually solves a lot of problems. 24 hours, constant uptime, collateralization, and so on and so forth, right? Innovative business models. Identity. We haven't talked about identity. I'm a big believer in identity of people and things, by the way, stamped onto the chain, Bitcoin being the chain that should hold your most valuable thing, which is your identity, who you are, and what the identity of your property. What
Yeah.
else do you think is going to come to Bitcoin?
So, yeah, I mean, everything. No. So, look, I think where it's really powerful for is what you're talking about there, right? Like transaction layer, provenance, and identity are, I think, the things that crypto are really interesting for and can potentially do better. There's actually a whole tangent, by the way, to go here on of why I think it's insane to build a crypto company, only in the U.S. or only in Western Europe right now, and like we take that to heart. We're very firmly like a global remote company, and part of the reason for that is that a big part of crypto's potential is right, trust when it comes to legal and financial structures, right, or trustless when it comes to legal and financial structures. And that's not that big a deal in a lot of ways in the US or Western Europe or things, right? I can
Mhm.
sign a contract with you, and if it's $1 million contract, the cost I might have to pay to a lawyer to enforce it isn't really that big a deal to me, right? Like I can trust that the courts will enforce it. That's not true in all parts of the world, right? There's a lot of parts of the world where I mean, the transaction values are a lot lower, but also just there isn't that reliable legal and financial system that you can depend on to enforce the contracts and things. And so I think, that documentation, to a degree, the smart contract layer, the provenance layer, I think a lot of really interesting applications are we're actually going to see come out of other parts of the world over the next few years. And this is also why I work like at a company that's all about enablement. Um, I don't necessarily want to have to come up with all the cool applications. I just want to build the tools that like make them happen for it. So, coming back around to your core question there, like I said, I think anything where money is transacting and where you need that safe transaction layer, identity, and provenance are like the real good applications for crypto. As opposed to like, put a I don't know. There's all kinds of random other stuff like, but I don't think it's as necessary for that.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you. I also want to say everything is coming to Bitcoin, but I love having this uh, zoomed out global view. And a lot of times I do find that in the US, in the Western world, we catch ourselves off sides almost. And a lot of the politicians, they go out and speak out against crypto. We don't when I say off sides, we're very privileged to be in a very stable system,
Hmm.
especially of
Yep.
government and laws. And the rest of the world isn't like that. And one of the kind of bull cases for crypto all up that I think about when I really step back and I'm scared about looking at my portfolio and the price levels are falling is we are, by many pundits, in the most difficult macro environment, monetary macro environment, um, uh, in my monetary macro environment in the last 40, 50 years. Plus, on top of that, we have a nuclear power at war with its neighboring country.
Yep.
Plus, on top of that, right, we have COVID lockdowns in the second biggest economy of the world. So if there was any like the black swan event of 2008 of the great financial crisis is nothing compared to what is actually happening now. I mean, Terra is probably bigger, or the market cap, I should say, for from 3 trillion down to 1.3 or wherever we are now. That fall is much bigger than the whole great financial recession that we've had in 2008, 2009. So, and that's just in the crypto space. So we're in the middle of the most unprecedented black swan uh, confluence of events, and Bitcoin is still at 30,000, by the way,
Yep.
and the market isn't missing a beat, and people are still building. And if that's not a kind of bull case for crypto, for truly innovative technology, I really don't know what is. And
Yep.
especially again, why when we zoom out, like let's look at Africa, let's look at the rest of the world, where and when inflation is really a problem. Oh, and inflation. We talked about that. When inflation is a huge problem, they do turn to crypto. Argentina, they do turn to crypto.
Yep. Exactly.
So yeah,
As we are talking about, like this isn't it's clearly established, not going where. And my favorite thing is, yeah, people are like, oh my god, Bitcoin's at 30,000. I'm like, it was at 30,000 in July of last year as well, and then it went back up to like 6. I mean, and if you look at where it was 2 years ago,
yeah.
in mid 2020, it was at like 10 or lower, right? It's again, this is a generational project, and I think if you just got to keep your eye on that. And then the flip side is, some people who are super bullish are like, okay, there's this, as you said, a black swan event. Things don't happen overnight on the good side either, right? Like if you look at a lot of, I mean, take a look at how many years it took SaaS to establish itself,
Yeah.
right? And the 2008 financial crisis and people trying to like kind of cut back on a lot of their spend helped that. Um, but it still took several years for that to become the dominant model, and that was far less of a major shift than what crypto is. So yeah,
So like pay
it's
us monthly instead of paying us up front,
upfront, right?
years
Like
to do.
trust us
Yeah.
to run your software for you instead of doing it yourself. Like that's actually at the end of the day pretty light change compared to like completely reinterpret what like financial systems mean.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely, absolutely. So what just to switch gears, I know we're coming up on time here. And I by the way, just to put a little burden in your ear, we're gonna do a
Okay.
okay, not okay with you afterwards, which I'm gonna give you a whole bunch of stuff and you're gonna have to tell me whether it's okay or not. So
Okay.
just
I
stretch.
see how you guys came up with that with the okay. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. So just stretch those mental muscles. That's coming
Okay,
up.
got it. Got it.
But
I'm ready.
what? Tell me a little bit about any projects in the crypto space, stacks or maybe otherwise, that you're just super excited about, and why. Maybe two or three projects just for the audience.
What? All right. I mean, obviously, Stacks is a really interesting project. That's probably the best thing ever created in the crypto space.
Absolutely.
You totally put me on the spot, and I don't have a good answer to that.
But it's okay. I mean, look, or maybe even use cases, right? And we talked a lot about them, but maybe they're incremental use cases, just things that are pretty exciting to you as you
Yeah.
think about.
So the most, I'll tell you what the most interesting one is, and again, this is part of what's really exciting to me about proof of transfer and about like Stacks thing. I mean, again, there's a reason I work in this space. And so one of the things you've seen a lot of people talk about is like microtransactions, right? Like how it enables creators to get paid and things. And you've also, from the flip side, seen a lot of Web 2 people point out that like, hey, Web 2 is actually a pretty great model for it, right? Like, look at how free everything is. Do people really want to transact on everything? And I think there's actually a
Hmm.
very valid point there, right? We don't want to have to pay every time for everything, or turn everything into a financial transaction. And as someone who spent a lot of time working on community and intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations, yeah, it's a big deal. But there is a third way, I think, that crypto potentially enables, which is how do you basically have a set of people engaging in a financial transaction off to the side, And the offput of that is used to fund public good projects, whether it's something like Wikipedia or public housing or whatever. And you've already seen the first glimmers of this with city coins, right? You have people financially transacting around this city coin, and it throws off a yield for the city without the city having to do anything, take any risk. It basically replaces tax revenue for like the city of Miami, right? They already pulled out $5 million to send towards affordable housing
Mm.
without their people having to be involved in that transaction at all. And to me, that's a really, really big deal when it comes to funding these public good projects without necessarily introducing some of the complexities that come with financialization of things.
Awesome. I love it. All right. I'm going to go to okay, not okay.
All right, let's
You
do it.
ready?
Yeah,
First one up. China time tops and bottoms.
not
Okay?
okay.
Or not okay? Not okay.
Not even a question. Don't do it. Don't do it on the. Don't do it on the public stock markets. Don't do it with this unless you're like literally a hedge fund. Don't do it. Just buy things you think are good long term, and go.
Okay. Okay. In that case, on the flip side, DCAing into the market. I'm guessing
Huge fan of
okay.
DCAing. That's how I bought all my original Bitcoin.
Man, I should have listened to this. I should have done this interview about a year ago, or else I wouldn't be so wrecked right now.
Yeah, there you go.
Crypto bros. Okay or not okay?
Derogatory term, but there are some people who are terrible and live up to how awful it is.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, well, medium. Singing karaoke alone.
Oh, totally
Okay or
okay.
not okay?
Totally
Totally
okay.
okay. Eating beef jerky with milk. Eating beef jerky, chasing it with milk.
I mean, not okay for me, but if you're into that kind of thing, you do you. I'm not gonna yuck someone's yum, but like that is horrifying sounding to me.
I like this. I like the yucking someone's yum. That sounds pretty good. Okay. Honey in coffee. Okay or not okay?
Why are you just bringing up things I've never even contemplated? Fine, I guess. I don't know. People put it in tea.
Hey, now maybe it's a way to reduce sugar intake. I don't
That,
know.
that's
I
what,
don't
that's
know.
what I'm saying. I'll say okay. I mean, if someone wants to do that, sure.
Okay, good. Buying stacks. Okay or not
I don't know
okay?
if I'm allowed to say okay to that, but I mean, I buy stacks, but that's not investment advice.
I
Buying
love it. I
stacks on
love it.
OK Coin, okay.
Okay, there we go. Buying stacks on OK
If
Coin. That's
if you're
definitely
if
okay.
you're already going to be buying stacks and you're not taking investment advice from me, I'm okay with OK Coin.
Good. I love that. Look, lastly, we'll wrap up with this. One piece of advice. It could be professional, it could be personal, it could be a book, it could be whatever that you would give the audience.
Go to therapy. I think almost anyone can benefit from going to therapy. No,
during
there's
during this market for sure.
yeah, no. Look, there's nothing more important you can do than just being honest and in touch with yourself. And whatever it takes to do that and get you there, different things work for different people, but I think focusing on that is the most important thing anyone can do.
Awesome. I love it. Now, how can people get, in touch with you, find out more about what you guys are doing, download the wallet,
Yeah,
and
so you can
developers?
learn more about Stacks at stacks.co. If you're a developer, hero.so is the place to go. And if you just want really great shit posting and memes on Twitter, at Alex L. Miller is the place to look.
I love it. We're gonna have to everyone go follow Alex at Alex what Miller?
At Alex L. Miller.
Love it. At Alex L. Miller. Well, Alex, thanks so much for coming. We're excited to keep working with you. We're going to do awesome new integrations that are hopefully coming up that we won't spill too much of the beans on um, with you guys. But thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.